Hello everyone, welcome to the sprint demo for Sprint 2023-13 that we have just finished. So today, as usual, we will show some demos and have some discussions on the features including in this release. And let's start with a summary. So in this sprint, we have worked on a new warning, which the model compiler will emit in case it ignores an attribute default value. So this can happen for the case when you have an attribute that is set to be initialized using a constructor initializer, but then due to other settings, the model compiler cannot generate a constructor. So previously in this case, this was silently ignored, and this could lead to some runtime surprise where you thought the attribute would be initialized, but it turns out it was not. So now this warning will help you to detect this inconsistency early. We also improved navigation for inherited elements, states, transitions, and ports. So now you can navigate not only to the redefined element, which worked before, but now it also works for inherited elements. So it becomes easier to navigate, for example, inherited state machines. We have also introduced a new C++ language standard, which we call older than C++ 98. And at the same time, we have renamed the one that previously was called older than C++ 11 to become C++ 98. The reason we did this is that in some very old compilers, it can happen that they don't even support everything of C++ 98, even if it's a quite old standard by now. And in particular, we found that these C++ casts are sometimes not supported. So if you want to have the C-style casts that were generated before version 11, you can now get it again. And the benefit is that you can still develop on those old maintenance streams with the latest version of Artist, provide that you, of course, use an appropriate version of the target RTS. Then a couple of sprints ago, we demoed a new code editor, which allows you to view and edit all code snippets for an element in a single editor. Now we have continued to improve this feature, and we feel it's ready to be included as an experimental feature. So you will see the improvements soon in this area. We also continued our effort to improve the model debugger, and all these improvements are actually in the area of tracing. We have improved how we resize the trace editor. In particular, the capture tab is now, the table there is now appropriately sized, so that if you have a big screen, that we would take the best advantage of that screen space. Also, we fixed a problem that had to do with when you are relaunching a trace session. Now the elements listed in the capture tab are automatically resolved against the newly launched debug session. And both these features, by the way, we also decided to fix for 11.2. We have shipped an iFix, which is like a patch release that you can install on top of 11.2 2023 or 4 in case you want these two improvements also for 11.2 development. Then we have implemented support for tracing individual port instances. So previously you could trace ports, but it was not possible to say that I only want to trace, for example, port instance number 3 if you have a replicated port, but now that's possible. And last but not least, we have made a performance improvements that come into play when you have a capsule with a huge number of ports. For the common case that you want to trace all ports, we now have minimized the communication between the debugger and the target RTS significantly in this case, and that improves performance. Also in this iFix, we have fixed the remaining pieces of the GCC 12 support. As we already in last sprint, we have implemented the support, but now there were a few missing things, like the libTCP server were not available for that compiler, but now it is. And as part of that, we also have uplifted the version of Poco that we use in that library. And we also did some improvements to the build output. So in the UML development console, previously there were some unnecessary line breaks which could make the messages a bit hard to read. They have now been removed. And also we found, thanks to customer input, that it was a bit undocumented how to configure the build console buffer size. So by default, there is some truncation if the size exceeds a certain number of characters, but that was not properly documented, but now we have improved that. We have also in this sprint worked on supporting 64-bit Visual Studio compiler for Connexys. So now there are new transformation configurations available for this platform. And we have also made some improvements for how we communicate with the local license server. So now the read and connect timeouts that we use when talking to this license server are configurable by means of new system properties. And some of you may remember Designer 1 that we demoed a long time ago. This is for those of you who don't remember it. It's an optional component that you can install on top of RCRT Artist that allows you to export your models to a web server and access it through a web browser. This component now supports version 11.3. And finally, we have a new supported platform, Windows 11, that you can use if you like to run the tool on that platform. So then the deliveries we did, like I mentioned, we shipped an iFix for 11.2 2023-04. We hope this is the last update on 11.2 stream, but of course you never know. So if you find any very important problem on that you need to have fixed in the 11.2 stream, let us know, because we can of course always create an iFix 2 if needed. But otherwise, the main delivery after this sprint is the new version of 11.3 called 2023-13 that you should install on Eclipse 2022-06. And the older versions mentioned here are in maintenance mode as they have been for a while. And note that if you're using something as old as 10.3, you really should uplift soon because the support for that version ends end of this month. So to summarize, we have now 2 experimental features in the tool. The text-to-state machine have been there for a while, and now also this all code editor is an experimental feature that you will see demoed here today.